Jake Paul finally met his match when he faced off against Mike Tyson. Known for cherry-picking retired fighters, Paul took a dangerous step too far, stepping into the ring with the legendary Iron Mike, an opponent no one could underestimate.
The top and bang to the left hook right away, and Paul towards Mike Tyson. And time is called now, ring the two. With instructions given by the referee early going. Mike gets up on the right hand. He was there with a front right hand. It's up to 5 and 6. He's not gonna make it. Mike Tyson in dramatic fashion knocked out in the early seconds of the first round.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bout ends at 2 minutes 32 seconds of the opening round.
The build-up to the fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson was steeped in anticipation and tension. Jake Paul, a YouTube sensation turned boxer, had spent the last few years making a name for himself by fighting a string of carefully selected opponents, often older and well past their prime. His brash demeanor, relentless self-promotion, and knack for turning heads had earned him legions of fans, but this same attitude made him one of the most polarizing figures in the world of boxing. Paul's ability to market himself as an up-and-coming fighter was undeniable, but many in the boxing community saw him as little more than a sideshow, cherry-picking opponents and making a mockery of a sport that demanded respect, discipline, and skill. His critics argued that he wasn't taking boxing seriously, that he was in it only for the fame, fortune, and spectacle. Despite this, Paul's self-confidence was at an all-time high. He was convinced that Mike Tyson, despite his legendary status, was just another retired fighter who had long since passed his prime and could easily be added to his growing list of victories. Paul's brashness and sense of invincibility had made him seem almost untouchable, and he seemed eager to prove that even someone as fearsome as Tyson could be toppled by the next big thing in boxing. On the other hand, Mike Tyson, who was once considered the most feared fighter on the planet, was a living legend. The former undisputed heavyweight champion had once ruled the boxing world with an iron fist, knocking out opponents with brutal precision and ferocity. His name was synonymous with power, aggression, and respect. Yet, Tyson was 58 years old now, and though he had long since retired from the sport, his presence in the ring still commanded awe. Despite the ravages of age, Tyson was still in remarkable shape and remained as sharp as ever, with decades of experience and knowledge that no amount of time could erode. As the fight night approached, the excitement in the arena was palpable. Fans packed the venue, eagerly awaiting what promised to be an unforgettable spectacle. The contrast between the two fighters couldn't have been starker. Paul, the young, brash internet star with little more than a few years of boxing experience, was facing Tyson, the seasoned veteran whose every move in the ring was a product of decades of blood, sweat, and tears. For Paul, this fight was a chance to solidify his place in boxing history and prove the doubters wrong. For Tyson, it was a chance to remind the world of his greatness and show that true legends of the sport can't be dismissed so easily. When the bell rang, signaling the start of the fight, the energy in the arena reached a fever pitch. Tyson and Paul circled each other cautiously at first, each measuring the other up. But it quickly became clear that Paul was out of his depth. Tyson's movements were measured, precise, and purposeful, nothing like the ragged, aggressive swings of some of Paul's past opponents. Despite his age, Tyson moved with the grace and timing of a seasoned predator, his eyes locked on Paul with the intensity of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Paul, on the other hand, looked uneasy, unsure of how to handle the pressure Tyson was applying from the outset. Paul tried to establish his jab, keeping Tyson at a distance, but it was clear that Tyson wasn't going to be deterred so easily. Tyson's defense was airtight, his head movement sharp and fluid. Every time Paul threw a punch, Tyson either slipped it or expertly countered with a devastating shot to the body, landing punches that had Paul wincing. The difference in skill, experience, and overall ring intelligence was glaringly obvious. As the first round wore on, Tyson began to turn up the pressure. His punches, while not thrown with the same youthful explosiveness of his prime, were still delivered with power and precision, landing with a thud that reverberated throughout the arena. Paul, who had never faced an opponent of Tyson's caliber, was visibly rattled. His usual bravado began to fade as Tyson's relentless assault wore him down. Paul had expected a quick victory, but now he was beginning to realize the enormity of the challenge in front of him. With each passing second, Tyson's control of the fight became more apparent. Paul, unable to land anything significant, was being battered and overwhelmed. Tyson's experience in the ring had given him an almost sixth sense for what his opponents would do next, and he effortlessly anticipated Paul's every move. Tyson was toying with him now, systematically breaking him down.
Bangs him with a left hook right away and falls towards Mike Tyson. And time is called now to 2. With instructions given by the referee early going. Mike gets up on the right hand. He was ready there with a front right hand. It's up to 5 and 6. He's not going to make it. Mike Tyson in dramatic fashion knocked out in the early seconds of the first round.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bout ends at 2 minutes 32 seconds of the opening round.
While Paul's confidence continued to slip away. Midway through the first round, Tyson set a trap. After landing a series of brutal body shots, he feinted another one to Paul's midsection, causing Paul to instinctively lower his guard. It was the opening Tyson had been waiting for. With lightning speed, he unleashed a brutal right hand that connected flush with Paul's jaw. The punch was a thing of beauty, perfectly timed, perfectly placed, and delivered with the kind of power that had once made Tyson the most feared fighter in the world. The impact was immediate and devastating. Paul's legs buckled beneath him, and he crumpled to the canvas in a heap. The crowd erupted in a mix of shock and awe as the reality of what had just transpired began to sink in. Jake Paul, the self-proclaimed future of boxing, had been knocked out cold by a man nearly twice his age. The referee quickly stepped in, waving the fight off without hesitation. There was no need for a count. Paul was out and the fight was over. Mike Tyson stood over his fallen opponent, calm and composed. His expression was one of quiet satisfaction. He had come into the fight with something to prove, and he had done so in the most emphatic manner possible. Despite his years, Tyson had shown that his power and skill was still very much intact. This was not just a victory for Tyson, but a statement to the world. True greatness in boxing doesn't fade with age. On the other hand, Jake Paul was left humbled and defeated. The brashness and arrogance that had characterized his rise in the sport were nowhere to be seen as he was helped to his corner. His face was battered, his pride broken. This was a harsh lesson for Paul, one that exposed the limits of his abilities and the dangers of underestimating a fighter of Tyson's caliber. In the weeks leading up to the fight, Paul had talked a big game, dismissing Tyson as just another name on his hit list. But in the ring, all that talk had counted for nothing. Tyson had systematically dismantled Paul, exposing him as a fighter who, while talented in his own right, was simply not on the same level as the true legends of the sport. Tyson's victory was a triumph, not just for himself, but for boxing as a whole. In an era where celebrity boxing matches had become increasingly common, Tyson's knockout of Jake Paul was a powerful reminder of what true boxing excellence looks like. It was a victory for the purists, the fans and fighters who believed that boxing should be about skill, power, and respect rather than just entertainment and spectacle. Tyson had shown that even in his late 50s, he was still a force to be reckoned with. His knockout of Paul was a reminder that, in boxing, there are no shortcuts to greatness. The aftermath of the fight sparked a broader conversation about the state of boxing in the modern era. Celebrity fights, once a novelty, were now becoming commonplace. While they brought new audiences to the sport, they also risked undermining the integrity of boxing. Tyson's victory was a statement that no matter how famous you were outside the ring, the sport demanded respect. It wasn't just about who could sell the most tickets or generate the most media buzz. It was about a lifetime of hard work, discipline, and respect for the craft. For Jake Paul, the loss was a sobering experience. It exposed the gap between him and true boxing greats like Tyson and shattered the myth that celebrity could overcome experience and skill in the ring. The image of Paul lying unconscious on the canvas, knocked out cold by a man almost twice his age, would be an enduring symbol of that night, a reminder that in boxing, as in life, there are no shortcuts to greatness. In the end, the fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul would be remembered as a defining moment in both of their careers. For Tyson, it was another chapter in his legendary legacy, a victory that reaffirmed his place as one of the greatest and most feared heavyweights of all time. For Paul, it was a humbling lesson that revealed the harsh realities of the sport, a reminder that no amount of hype or self-promotion could replace the discipline and dedication necessary.